Hi, I'm Vita Anderson and welcome to the 406 Creative Vibe Studio and SewFly Quilts. Today I'm going to do a tutorial on how to make this adorable Sewing Notions bag. It's by Abby Lane Quilts, and I ran across the pattern while I was traveling in Helena, Montana this weekend, and I thought it was so cute. I not only wanted to make it, but I thought I could help you make one as well. This pattern can be made using fat quarters and a 5/8 yard of one fabric, so you don't need a whole lot of fabric to make this. You could use things that are in your stash, or you could go out and curate the fabrics that you want specifically for the bag. To follow along with this tutorial, you will need the Beatle Bag pattern from Abby Lane Quilts. The pattern is available at various retailers online or from Abby Lane Quilts. This is the supply list that's listed with the pattern on the Abby Lane Quilts website. Please note, I will not be referring to any measurements from the pattern other than these measurements in the supply list. The rest of the measurements that will be used during this tutorial are contained in the specifics of the pattern. I'm really loving yellow lately, so I used 4 coordinating fabrics from the Springbrook collection by Corey Yoder for Moda Fabrics. The pattern includes the plastic sleeve inserts for the inside of your bag. One thing that I really like about this pattern is that you can also order additional sleeve inserts, so if you want to make multiple bags and give them as gifts, you're able to do that. Now, I did alter the bag just a little bit. You can follow the directions to the T, or you can make some of the changes that I made when I was making the bag. It's totally up to you. But the bigger point is this is a simple enough pattern that even a beginner sewist can make it. So let's get started. First, lay your fabrics out and cut off the selvage edge. I actually decided to start out going backwards with cutting my fabrics. I started with the 5/8 yard piece and worked my way up the list, cutting the fabrics as I went. The first tip I'm going to give you is that whenever you're making a pattern like this with a bunch of rectangles and pieces, I like to label them as I go along. That way I can refer to those labels to keep track of what is what. Once your pieces are cut out, if you haven't done so already, press your pieces. If you've used glass-headed pens, it will be okay to iron over your labels if you need to. This is the first alteration that I made to the pattern. It calls for foam stabilizer, called Soft and Stable. I am a quilter, so I have lots of pieces of batting left over from previous quilts, so I decided to use my leftover batting for my pattern. Whichever one you use, cut the pieces according to the pattern and label them just like you did your fabric pieces. Before you begin sewing, take your pattern and go through the checklist of all the pieces that you need and check them off to make sure you've cut everything that you need for fabric as well as the batting. The first step is to quilt the bag body. I chose to use a diagonal pattern, and I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can do that. Take the fabric piece for your outer bag, and using a chalk liner of your choice, we're going to take our quilting ruler and we're going to draw the diagonal lines onto the outer bag for quilting. If you choose to chalk out your lines, be sure to be consistent about your measurements. I used 1.5 inches between each line. The quilting ruler is very helpful in lining up the measurements between each line. And don't forget to turn your fabric and go back in the opposite direction. If your machine has an edge quilting guide, this is a great tool for sewing straight lines when quilting. This is what I used for quilting the outer bag. Install your quilting guide and then sew along the lines that either you started drawing or using the edge quilting guide to measure the distance between them. I set mine to 1.5 inches and then I was able to use that guide to get a straight line every time. Make sure to set your machine to the needle down position so that every time you stop, it keeps that needle in the fabric to hold your place. When you're done quilting the outer and inner bag, trim it according to the pattern, and if you made the alteration I made, there's no need to repeat steps 1 through 4. Now we'll sew the inside tabs and center straps. Use a seam gauge and refer to your pattern for the measurements on your folds. Once you are finished pressing all the folds, then take your center strap and fold it wrong sides together and press. Now we'll set that aside and we'll move on to our inside tabs, pressing them according to the pattern, top stitch according to the pattern, and then take the soft side of your Velcro pieces that you cut for your center tabs and sew those onto each tab. I have an older model vintage machine that I like using for this type of sewing. I also like using it as a secondary machine that I can set up with different colored threads for my projects. In this case, I have a lighter thread in the bobbin and black in my top needle for stitching the Velcro. One thing to make sure of is do not use self-sticking Velcro. That has a tendency to gum up your machine. It's easier to purchase the Velcro that doesn't have anything sticky on the back and sew it on. Once you have sewn your Velcro onto your inside tabs and center strap, we are ready to sew those pieces to the inside of our bag. Refer to your pattern for the measurements and use a chalk liner for marking where to place your center strap and tabs. With the Velcro side up, center the inside strap over the lines that you chalked. The center strap is not supposed to go all the way up to the edges. This will make more sense later when we get ready to finish the bag. Now we are ready to sew the strap into place. If your machine gives you a choice for a reinforced stitch, choose that stitch, sometimes called a bar tack stitch, for sewing in your center strap. Reinforcing that stitch means that you'll have a much heavier stitch for holding in your plastic sleeves when your bag is done. Go ahead and put your inside tab pieces over the Velcro on the center strap. Allow it to hang over the edge just a little bit and then stitch it down. Later we'll trim this off. For now you can set the body of your bag aside and find the pieces for your pincushion. Take your two pieces and make sure that they are wrong sides together. Fold them in half to find the center. And mark the center with either chalk or a pen. Now mark your piece according to the pattern for placing your Velcro. Line up the loop side of your Velcro piece and pin it into place. Keeping the two pieces wrong sides together, take them to your sewing machine and attach the Velcro, sewing through both pieces. When we fold it in half and sew it to fill for our pincushion, we're going to end up with a nice reinforced pincushion. that over time, putting pins in and out will not poke holes. Fold in half right sides together and sew a seam down each side. Trim the corners on the closed side of your pincushion and turn inside out. It might be a little tough at first. If you have a fabric turner, you can use that to help you. Fold in the top edge, the open side, and press. Make sure you do this before you try to fill it. It's a whole lot easier. And be sure to press it on the fabric side only. You don't want to put your iron on that Velcro. Now we're ready to fill our pincushion with crushed walnut shells. If you have something with a pour spout, it'll be much easier. I used a little over 1.5 cups of crushed walnut shells to fill my pincushion. Every once in a while, tap the bottom of your pincushion to pack those walnut shells nice and tight into your pincushion. Several years ago, I was making pincushions and thread catchers for my studio, and I was shocked to see how much crushed walnut shells sell for by the pound. Of course, everything that I was finding was packaged for a sewist. Then it occurred to me that crushed walnut shells are used as a tumbling media for polishing reloaded ammunition shells. So I went out to Amazon and I bought it in a 5-pound container. In the long run, it was a whole lot cheaper. I had enough to make all the pincushions I wanted to make, give some as gifts, and now enough for this project as well. When your pincushion is filled to the density that you like, sew the top closed. Now you're going to mark the inside right side of your bag according to the pattern for the placement of the adjoining Velcro for your pincushion. Pin and sew into place, taking into account the color of the thread in your bobbin and your top needle according to your fabric on the inside and outside of your bag. Set it aside as we make the interior pockets. I chose to have a contrasting fabric as the interior of my pockets. First, line up the shorter batting pieces with the bottom of your exterior pieces and quilt. I chose to quilt this with a more random pattern. If you just start in one corner or even in the middle, sew across to the other side, use your needle down feature, and then turn and go up another direction, it gives you a nice geometric random pattern. Just keep doing this until it's quilted as much as you want the piece to be quilted. Using your rotary cutter and your quilting ruler, trim all the excess batting from all 4 sides of your outer pocket. With right sides together, layer the outside pocket and batting on top of the accent pocket. Then line up the 3 pieces along the bottom edge and pin together. Now we're ready to sew them. Up until now, I've been using an open toe applique foot. You'll want to switch over to a 1/4 inch quilting foot if you have it. Your 1/4 inch quilting foot will give you the perfect seam for this step. Start at the top and sew the 3 pieces together down both sides and along the bottom. Remember to use your needle down feature so you can make the turns easy. Trim the sewn corners Turn them right side out. Use a point-to-point turner to push out your seams and fine-tune your points. When you're happy with it, mark the top according to the pattern with a chalk line. Fold it at the line that you marked, pin it, and press. Now you're ready to sew the top stitch accent for the outside of the pocket. Start by sewing close to the edge of that fold and then repeat with another line about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch away from the first line. Repeat this step for both pockets. Measure and mark the placement for your pockets according to the pattern instructions. It's a good idea to pin them into place before sewing them so they don't shift on you. Repeat this step for the second pocket. I used my 1/4 inch foot as a guide for my seam. Be sure to select needle down, and I also suggest using that bar tack stitch at the top of each side of your pockets. Now we're going to make our handle and our 2 outside straps. There should be 1 short strap, 1 long strap, and the handle. This is another alteration I made to the pattern. Take your straps, fold them lengthwise down the middle. Now lay your batting on one side. Using a basting stitch, baste your batting on the wrong side of the fabric to one side of each strap. I basted at each end and along the middle. With right sides together, fold each of your straps in half lengthwise and pin. Now we're going to sew down the long side of each strap. Once you've sewn all your straps, turn them right side out using your point-to-point turner. You're going to press your straps flat and then you're going to begin your top stitching. Top stitch down the edge of each strap on each side, flipping back and forth and alternating the distance between each row of stitches. I'm happy with how these turned out, so now we're ready to attach our straps. Trim each strap to size according to the pattern measurements. Fold the outside short strap in half and line it up with the fold according to the strap template. Be sure your straps are at the correct angle and iron them flat. Position the short strap on the outside body of your bag according to the measurements in the pattern and pin into place. Be sure to position your buckle and finish your ends before sewing your strap on. So I simply left it in place and took it over to the ironing board so that I could press them under and then top stitch them before I proceeded. Top stitch your handle into place according to the pattern. If you quilted your bag like I did, you need to make sure that you don't sew through the pockets on the other side or your velcro for your pincushion. Fold the long outside strap in half using the template that we used before. Be sure to do a double fold on each end before you top stitch. Now that you've got the left side pinned and the right side folded under, take it to your machine and top stitch the left side down and then top stitch the right side under, finishing the end of your strap. Change your top thread only to black and sew your velcro to your strap. Make sure that the velcro that you're going to sew onto the back to match up with the strap is the same size. Thread the strap through the loop and around the back of the bag to mark the location of your adjoining velcro. When you're happy with the position, pin it into place. It's probably going to be too thick to actually work the pins all the way through. I just used my pins poking them through the fabric and the velcro to hold it into place. Once you've sewn your velcro into place, double check that you're happy with the location before proceeding with the next steps. With the inside of your bag facing up, center the handle piece over the center strap on the inside with the raw edges of the handle piece at the edge of the body of the bag. Stitch down about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. We're almost done with our bag. Now you're going to sew your binding to your bag. It doesn't matter whether you attach your binding to the inside or the outside of the bag. I attached mine to the inside using my quilting foot. As you sew your binding around the bag, you will also be attaching your handle into place permanently. If you've never attached binding before, be sure to check out my video tutorial on how to make binding and attach binding. When you're done sewing your binding on, you'll need to press it out flat all the way around your bag. Once I was done, I flipped it over and I pressed the binding down flat on the outside of the bag using quilt clips to hold it into place. The quilt clips will hold the binding into place while I hand stitch the binding all the way around the bag for a professional and finished look. Now you can pull the bag through the handle. Once you stitch down your binding, your bag is done. Now you're ready to put your plastic sleeves in. The pattern gives instructions on how to put them in using your tabs that you made with your center strap. My pin cushion has been velcroed in and it's ready for me to put pins in. This bag has plenty of space for all the notions I'll need for some upcoming sew-alongs and retreats. If you found this video tutorial helpful, please consider subscribing and sharing. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at 406 Creative Vibe and Sewfly Quilts.